12. I said 13, didn't I? But chapter 12, verse 43. And it's the end of a address, kind of, that a back and forth with the Pharisees. And so I'm going to tell you that it started with the healings going on part. He went in, they said he was casting out demons by the spirit of Beelzebul. And he said, a kingdom divided against itself can't stand. You guys don't understand much. Went on to him telling them that they need to make the tree good so the fruit will be good. Their fruit is bad because they don't spend any time working on the tree, which is them. They don't work on the character, so the outcome of their character is bad. And so then they say, well, then if you have the authority to say these things to us, show us a sign. And he says, only an evil and perverse generation asks for a sign. And we talked about how that, I always wonder about that because signs are good. I like signs. They tell me which way to go and when to stop and when to go. And I'm looking for signs all the time, and I'm not an evil and perverse generation. So what does it mean? And so we looked into that and talked about at the time of Jesus, there were 3 signs to prove the Messiah had come. And they were man-made signs. Man had made them up. This river will run backwards. This flow out of this cave will turn to blood. And they had 3 of them. And so they're saying, show us these signs that we all know are the sign the Messiah has come, and you have the authority to teach us these things. And he's saying, only an evil, perverse generation makes up a sign to prove its point. And so we talked about that. Here we are. Verse 43, the next verse. Now, when the unclean spirit goes out of a man, it passes through waterless places, seeking rest, and does not find it. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds it unoccupied, swept, and put in order. Yeah, I lost my place. Then it goes and takes along with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go and live there. And the last state of that man becomes worse than the first. And that is the way it will also be with this evil generation. What Jesus is telling them is evil doesn't end. It goes out, waits its time, and comes back. We may conquer a nation. We may depose or overcome a Hitler in this world, but the evil that drives a Hitler, the great racism, the great fascism, doesn't disappear from the world. It goes quiet for a while and then returns. Greed, selfishness, all of these things that we try to maneuver in a day-to-day life. And if we are Christians, if we give our life to Jesus, we try to become less or unselfish. We try to become not a partner with evil, but instead a partner with good. We try. We put our mind to it, and we think that somebody will come along someday and kill this evil. So, and I've read the end of the book. He does in the end of the book, but at this time in history and our time in history during this walk, we have to, the unclean spirit goes out from a man. Once we get free, we do a graduation today because somebody has broken free from the grip in their life. And we've done many graduations, and people break free. There's another parable where Jesus talks about you can't get the demon out of your life unless someone stronger comes along and kicks them out, right? Then they wander, and they come back, but if they find it welcome, they bring 7 of their friends, and that's what he said here. And, we like that, to use that verse in so many different Hollywood movies or different thought patterns, different ways of describing how bad happens. But the truth is that when we get free and go back, it usually gets worse. Right. I mean, I don't care how else you want to describe it, but when we broke free from something, and we go back to it, when we're set free and we go back to bondage, it's usually worse. I've heard many men tell me, and more men than women, but I've heard many men tell me that when they go back to jail, it's way worse. It feels like a way worse failure. This might be who I am. At first, it was just a mistake I paid for, but this second time, this seems like this might be my life. Now, I've heard many men talk to me about how they began to plan their life to be that. This is where I live, is inside the jail, inside this life. This kind of dysfunction is, for me, And I've heard many people tell me how they watched all of us and said, well, that's their life. That's for them. I'm not allowed to have that. Well, that's a lie. When I go back to Adam, the story of Adam and Eve and the slithering, way that evil speaks and the way it beckons us to come and do what it wants us to do for some reason, I believe there is a personality of evil. There is demonic forces in this world that are always trying to beckon us, come hither, come with me. And they're trying to lead us into this, and usually they don't have horns and a pitchfork. Usually they don't have a loaded gun pointed at your head. Usually it looks good when you start, like Eve started towards disobedience. Like Abraham went and said to Hagar, hey, baby, the first day that happened, he didn't think of it as evil. The way when Job was just trying to figure out why bad things happened to him, it seemed like a wise thing to do. To start talking about, well, did I do bad or did God do bad? And God said, you don't get to judge me. And I think that every bad thing we head towards looks good the first day, looks good the first step, and we find ourselves in difficulty. And what Jesus is trying to tell these Jewish men who run the Jewish religion is you guys went down a bad road and you just kept going. And then now you're ready to reject the Messiah. You're ready to miss the coming of the one you've been waiting for thousands of years because you're so stuck on what you believe and what you think is right, what you've decided and what you've taught and what you've planted your feet on, the foundation you've chosen to stand on. And I know so many people, we like to say around here that we climb very slowly out of the muck. But when we let go, we fall fast. And I'm telling you, man, when you fall down something you've worked hard to climb, when you look at, I got to climb again. And it's the reason, again, we've been studying Matthew 13 chapters. The reason, again, Matthew wrote this was well stated to prove that, to show the Jewish nation that Jesus is the Messiah. And that's what these verses are compiled with. They're in order, and responses are remembered and shown to be that Jesus is the Christ. Does he have to be the Christ as you need him to be? Or as you say he is? Or does he just get to be it and we should all just agree to it and go after him? I think our relationship with evil is really well seen in this. That we get ourselves, this is the biggest problem I see in the drug world, in the fatherless generation, in the abandoned generation, in the dysfunctional world. The greatest problem is we make a little success. We climb out of the muck a little while. We go, it's good. Finally, life is good. The testimony is, I never thought I could have a life like this. And then we just forget. We get on the wrong off-ramp, and pretty soon we see the sign, welcome back, baby. And the big door slams and the lock clicks. The finances are gone. The thing we thought was good turns out to be bad. And things are 7 times worse, or even 2 times. We call it whatever times you want. It's worse. It's harder. It's miserable. So here at the Father's house, what I'd like to do is constantly remind you and constantly tell you, let's go slow, let's go steady, but let's keep our eyes on the prize. Let's go forward. What he just said, make the tree good so that the fruit will be good.
That's right.
If you make the tree bad, your fruit's going to be bad. It's going to turn out bad. And in this case, even when it's good, it's real good, and it's real good, folks. You got to make sure you keep the door locked and you don't let the unclean spirit have a place. Make the place no longer look like the old place. Make the place no longer look like a place he'd be welcome in. And you just keep going. He doesn't die. It doesn't die. It just goes and waits for another opportunity. It just waits, and it's patient. I've always said that about the afflictions of our life are so patient. They wait so patiently just for us to turn a little bit towards them. Well, it's a horrible story, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it anyway. But there was a guy who ran a Christian ministry here in town, and there was something wrong. And he was the talk of it. In small towns, people become the talk of the town. I've had my day, and then sometimes the talk of me is bad, and sometimes it's good. And you have your high. Some days you eat the bear, and some days the bear eats you. And you just in a small town, you ride it. And this particular guy was riding high. He was the hero of the day. But he was still using drugs and leading a Christian ministry. And it was a drug ministry. And he ended up in our program and completely disgraced and miserable, upside down and backwards. And I remember he manifested this unclean spirit. It was pretty clear. It was pretty ugly. And as we were talking, and this thing was really, it was like three of us talking, really. It was really odd. I'm sorry, I don't want to scare anybody or scare small children. But all of a sudden, this man jumped up and stopped me from casting this demon out. And I said, why'd you do that? He said, that's been my friend all my life. When I was a child, my dad wasn't there, my mom wasn't there. I called out to him and he was there. Well, he's now in prison for the rest of his life, and people are dead because of him. And the situation, the insanity, I would say, got hundreds of times worse, not 7 times worse. And what Jesus came to do is set us free. When he said, I was hungry and you fed me not. I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. You probably know this list. He said to another group, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. And it goes on, but both groups had the same question. When? And he said, when you did not do it to the least of my brethren. And to this group he said, when you did it to the least of my brethren, you did it for me. You didn't do it for me. And I have found in my life that the best way to keep the house clean is to obey Jesus. Right. Now I ask people all the time, what is Jesus asking you to do? What is the command of Jesus Christ? Most people answer wrong. I'm not going to ask any of you to answer, but most people answer wrong. And I'll tell you what they say, and then if you thought you were going to say that, I'll tell you why you were wrong. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. That isn't what he commanded us. Right. He was answering a guy that said, what's the greatest command in the law? When he said that, the greatest commands in the law are these 2. He said, one time, he said, this I command you. Right. And this is something that everybody can do. In fact, the man I know who does this better than any other man alive is my son Mark. And if my son Mark can do it better than me, then it doesn't take a college education. It doesn't take great intellect. It doesn't take great dexterity or coordination. Right. Mark loves as he has been loved. He does it way better than me. If you hang out with Mark and you don't feel loved, you're not paying attention. You can hang out with me all day and you might not feel loved. It just depends what day it is. I mean, I can't tell you how lucky you are I'm not God. Because some days every one of you would be saved. It'd be a really good thing. And other days there ain't a one of you'd be saved. I mean, it's just a real topsy-turvy, stormy kind of thing. You know, I'm trying, but my son Mark can love as he's been loved. And that's what Jesus commanded us to do. He says, this I command you, that you love one another as I have loved you. And that's the answer to what is Jesus' commandment. That you love one another as I have loved you. And how he defined it is, I was hungry and you gave me something to drink or eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was naked and you clothed me. I was a stranger and you invited me in. As you have done unto the least of these, my brethren, you have done unto me. And he said, make the tree good. And I want to make the tree good. I don't want to worry about the fruit. I don't want to go out and try to create fruit. Think about that. When all you got to do is plant a seed, grow a tree, and the fruit will grow. Oh, you got to feed the tree. You got to water the tree. But the fruit will take care of itself if you do the right things. And he's saying the evil spirit or the unclean spirit, when it goes out of a man, it's going to come back to visit. My selfishness, I have many great moments of selflessness in my life. I have so many. I can just talk about them all day. But let's talk a little bit about the selfishness that I also have in my life. And it's time for me to really want the unclean spirit to have no root in me, to have no place in me. It's pretty hard with all this comfort and prestige and things that come into the human existence, all the things that divide us, all the ridiculous political arguments we're in, all the ridiculous religious fighting we do, all of the wars we fight and the land we possess, and it comes right down to what Jesus is talking about here. Only an evil and perverse generation is trying to prove everything. The blessed generation is hearing the truth and being set free. If you know me, he said, if you're my disciple, you'll know the truth. The truth will set you free. And he whom the Son sets free is free indeed. I want to be free. I want to be right. I want to read these verses, and I want to believe the unclean spirit. Is that real? Is that just Hollywood, or is that real? Well, I have evidence that it's real. I have been controlled, and I have controlled. And it is way better to not be controlled by the unclean spirit. It can be something someone else did. It can be all kinds of things. I want to encourage you. Lift up the name of Jesus. Don't forget it. Read what he says. Listen to what he says. Eat it, drink it, breathe it, preach it. Share your faith so that the knowledge, what he said to Philemon in the 6th verse is, I pray that the sharing of your faith will produce in you an understanding or a knowledge, either one can be used, of every good thing you have in following Jesus Christ. Every good thing you have. And I think we are afflicted with a forgetting of the every good thing we have. We'd be talking an awful lot more about every good thing we have. There's freedom in Jesus. If you're here today and you're bound by something, there's freedom in Jesus. There's a bunch of people here who found freedom who've not gone back, who have not welcomed back the unclean spirit. It's what we try to do here at the Father's house, is help people get free. When Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, it always shocks me that he told the guys standing around, help him off with his grave clothes. He rolled away a stone, conquered death, all those things, and yet his grave clothes are still on him. He left something for you and me to do, help people off with the things that cause death. Help people off with the things they're wearing in their life, the unforgiveness they're wearing in their life, the devastating hate, shame, self-image that is so poor. Help them off, build them up. Amen. I'd like to encourage you in that.